This is my audience.
Do you recognize this face? This is the face of Jeffrey Dahmer. Jeffrey Dahmer is a widely known American serial killer. Jeffrey Dahmer is widely known as one of America's most notorious serial killers. The Oxford English Dictionary defines serial killer as a person who commits a series of murders, often with no apparent motive, and typically following a characteristic of predictable behavior pattern. Between the years of 1978 and 1991, Dahmer committed the rape, molestation, murder, and dismemberment of 17 boys in all. By understanding the psychological characteristics and behavior of Jeffrey Dahmer, we can prevent this type of horrific tragedy from reoccurring by knowing the signs and catching them quickly. I have been intrigued with Jeffrey Dahmer since watching the documentary The Jeffrey Dahmer Files. I have done a lot of research on different databases about his childhood and teen years and how his childhood and teen years led up to his murderous rage. I will first discuss Dahmer's childhood. Secondly, I will talk about how his childhood led up to his teen years and how his teen years contributed to the murder of 17 boys. Lastly, I will talk about how he was caught, sent to prison, then murdered in prison. Knowing that Dahmer committed at least 17 sex crimes to mostly underage boys, it can be reasoned that he was a very dark individual that seemed to have a troubled past. Dahmer was born in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. His father was a chemist and his parents quarreled and eventually divorced. In later years, a probation officer entered in his life, and he entered into Dahmer's records this. His father states Dahmer had been sexually abused by a neighbor boy at the age of 8 years old. Growing up, Dahmer was a loner and didn't show interest in school. The article Secrets of a Serial Killer by Matthews and Springen states that on one occasion he sneaked into a yearbook picture of the High School Honor Society. He was caught and then he was edited out of the picture. A furious Jeff Nobody was born. When Dahmer started high school, he began drinking heavily. This only increased his murderous rage. The article Sins of the Sun by Paula Chen states he told NBC Dateline that by the age of 15, he started having obsessive thoughts of violence intermingled with sex that just got worse and worse. By his senior year, his parents separated, leaving him alone at the age of 18 in a house on Bath Road. He committed his first murder there that June when he beat and strangled a 19-year-old hitchhiker named Stephen Hicks, then cut up the body and scattered the parts in the woods. That's where his murderous rage began and didn't cease until he was 34 years old. 16 deaths later, on July 22, 1991, police raided Jeffrey Dahmer's apartment and took him under arrest. Dahmer's murderous rampage might have continued for who knows how long had one of his victims not escaped. Olivia Waxman states in her article how police caught Jeffrey Dahmer that running down a Milwaukee street with a pair of handcuffs dangling from one wrist, Tracy Edwards, 32, told police that Dahmer was trying to kill him. He was arrested without any struggles or difficulty. He explained to the police he usually lured men from shopping malls and bars by offering them money to pose for pictures. After giving them strong drugs, he would strangle his victims and dismember the bodies. Waxman also states that he often boiled their heads to remove the flesh. The disorganized nature of Dahmer's arrest led many to accuse the Milwaukee police of negligence in the case and of failing to properly investigate crimes against minorities. Jeffrey Dahmer was sentenced to a 957-year term without no chance for parole at the Columbia Correctional Institute in Portage, Wisconsin. He was not sentenced to life in prison, and the prison failed to do its job in saying that the sentence of the court was carried out, because in December of 1994, Dahmer was murdered by a fellow prisoner. At 7:50 a.m. on Monday morning, Dahmer began working on a 3-man cleaning crew. The 3 may have been left alone for a time because at 8:10 a.m., Dahmer and a fellow inmate were found beaten. Prison sources say that guards found blood on the 3rd member of the crew, Christopher Scarver. No 2 serial killers are alike, but Dahmer fit the typical silhouette: a white male, smart, and a kid from a broken home. I first discussed his childhood. Secondly, I discussed his teen years. And lastly, I discussed how Dahmer was caught and sent to prison, then murdered in prison. By understanding the psychological characteristics and behavior of Jeffrey Dahmer, we can prevent this type of tragedy from reoccurring. From a young age, he showed all signs of murderous rage. From abusing animals, to being a troubled kid at school, to drinking heavily, all the signs were prevalent and pointed towards a dark future. Thank you.